Hello YouTubers and fellow hams. Hopefully my voice holds out. I've been sick as a dog this week. The antibiotics are finally starting to kick in. And still have an occasional coughing fit, so you might see a few edits. If I break into a coughing fit, there'll be some cuts. But part 2 of the backyard vertical project, we're going to build a 9:1 UnUn for feeding the antenna and a 1:1 common mode choke that will go up the line about 6 inches or so from the UnUn to cut down on the RF coming back up the feed line. So I have all the parts here that I'm going to use to build it. A couple of toroids, and a note on the toroids, I have ordered some T100-2s, which are not here yet, but I wanted to get this filmed now that I'm feeling better. I've lagged behind in my production schedule this week with being laid up with the sinus infection and chest congestion. A note on toroids. I wanted to build these with the T100s, but they're not here yet, so I'm going to go ahead and use a much larger T200 for the wind, because this will make it easier for you to see on video after I get the camera repositioned what I'm doing. And it'll just make for well, it could make for a higher power version if I use the right wire, but we'll just use that because I have it on hand, and as I said, being bigger, it'll be easier for you to see what's going on. And I've got a T80-2 that I'll wind the 1:1 on, and that'll work fine for a 100-watt station. The T100-2s with, I've got, 18 gauge wire here? Yeah, I think that's 18 gauge. Will be fine for 100 watts. If you wanted to build it for higher power, you'd have to scale everything up. There's all kinds of information about that on the web, though, so we won't get into that too deeply. Toroids. I thought that I'd take a moment to demystify the numbering scheme that some of you might not know about. The numbering scheme on the toroids is T and a number, a dash and another number. What do those numbers mean? Well, T obviously means it's a toroidal shape. The first number is the diameter of the toroid in hundredths of an inch. So a T100 will be 1 inch in diameter. A T200, like this one, is 2 inches in diameter. Then there's a dash and there's another number. These are dash 2s. That second number has to do with the metal mix, the mix of metals that they powdered and pressed together to form the toroid. And that mix denotes a characteristic of the toroid as to which frequencies it's going to work best at. And the dash 2s are good for HF applications. So that's what those numbers mean. All right, let me reposition the camera, and we'll go over everything that I've got here, which we're going to need to build the 9:1, and we'll get started. Okay, to build our 9:1, first thing you're going to need an enclosure. Now, I 3D printed one, but you could use any type of a hobby enclosure, little plastic kit enclosures that you can buy online. If you're going to put it outside and it's going to be permanently outside, you'd want it to be a weatherproof enclosure. You're going to need a connector. I've got an SO239 mounted on this one. You could use a BNC if you wanted. And you're going to need some hardware for connecting the external connections. This is going to be for ground here, and this is going to be for the antenna wire here. So any kind of an enclosure. You're going to need your toroids. Now, T100-2s will work just fine for both the 9:1 and the 1:1 common mode choke. A ruler, continuity tester of some type. I've got this little portable meter here I'm going to use. Some heat shrink tubing. We're going to try something to make it a little neater. And wire. Now I've got 18 gauge wire here, which, as I said, this will be fine for up to 100 watts. 16 gauge you could use if it'll be a little tighter on the wind. If you're going to go with a higher power and a bigger toroid, if you want to get up to 400, 500 watts, you probably want to use maybe 14 gauge wire. It'd be a little harder to work with, but you need that extra diameter. Solid core. You don't want to use stranded wire. You want solid core, and the main reason for that is the wire will hold its shape better as you're winding around the toroid. It won't want to spring back out, and that makes it just so much easier to do. So the first thing we've got to do is we've got to figure out how much wire we need. Let's look at a diagram of the 9-to-1. Okay, the 9-to-1 is an auto transformer. Now I have a diagram of an auto transformer here, and as you can see, it has two windings like a transformer, but they share a tap, and you got a low Z and a high Z section. And in the 9-to-1, that low Z section goes to our input, and then the high Z section goes to the antennas out to the antenna, the end-fed wire. Now back to the picture of the 9-to-1. We're going to wind 3 parallel wires, and although this picture has 10 turns in it, you count the turns by the number of times the wire passes through the middle. It's actually going to be 9 turns. Now it looks a little complex on the surface, and he's got the diagram color-coded, which makes it very easy to follow for doing the wiring. But we do need to get 3 parallel turns wound around our toroid. All right, so how much wire are we going to need? Well, to figure that out, here's a simple trick. You can take your toroid and you can wrap your wire 1 turn around it, right? Nice and tight. And then you can take a marker, hold that tight, and get that really nice and tight there. And I'm going to take my marker and I'm just going to draw a line across both wires. Now I'm going to unwrap that, and I'm going to measure the difference between, or the distance between these 2 marks. Get that straightened out. And we've got 5 centimeters, or about 2 inches. All right, so we know we're going to have 9 turns, and at 2 inches, well, that'd be 9 times 2, so that'd be 18 inches of wire to go all the way around. Or we had 5 centimeters, so 9 times 5 is 45 centimeters. So I'm going to measure out that length of wire, and then I'm going to add a couple inches to each end so that we have enough wire hanging off the end of the toroid to do our connections with. So let's see, what do we work in? Shall we work in centimeters or shall we work in inches? I'm going to work in, well, the majority of my viewers, I guess, are here in the U.S., so we'll work in inches, right? So we've got 2 inches to go 1 time around, times 9 is 18 inches. So I'm going to measure off 18 plus 4. There's 12. $18 plus 4. And I'm going to cut 3 wires of the same length. All right, so I've got my 3 wires. Now, as you recall from the diagram, these have to stay in parallel with each other, and they're separated, the windings are separated. And that's really important, is to keep that symmetry and that cleanliness when you wind these things. So we're going to want to keep these wires parallel to each other as we take them around the toroid. And my thought was that I would stretch these all out and then just take some pieces, some short cuts of some heat shrink and put them on there to help keep them grouped together while I work with them. My hands are a little shaky. Being sick sucks, I tell you. Reminds you of your mortality. A little colony of bacteria come along and says, hey, guess what? You're not Superman. All right. Some people go all out with this. They'll rig up a jig and they'll stretch their wires out, flatten them out, and put tubing over them, and use hot glue to really make them stay nice and flat and parallel. You can work it out as you're doing the winding and keep things nice and straight. You don't want the individual wires crossing over each other. You want them to stay 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 all the way across. Now you'll notice that my wires are all the same color, whereas the diagram, he color-coded them. And that's why we need the continuity tester, and I'm going to show you a trick there when we get to wiring it up at the end after we've wrapped the toroid. So I'm going to start with my wires nice and parallel, and we're going to start doing our winding. I'm going to run off about 2 inches there so that we'll be able to do our connections, and we'll make our first turn. Keep one finger on here to hold it and just bring that around. Use this other finger to guide the wires around. And then while holding it, take the loose wires, run them through there. And you kind of want to feed them in from this side. You don't want to just grab them and pull right away, because what will happen is this loop will twist. Put this more in the center. This loop will twist and it'll get you all screwed up. So we'll get that pulled mostly through there, and now we need to make sure that those stay parallel. So I'm going to, from this side, keep those 3 together, bring them around, and using my fingers, I'm pushing them down against the core as I bring them through for the turn. You just want to keep that nice and tight against the core. And there's our first 2 turns, because we've gone through the center twice. I'm going to pinch that down with my thumb. I'm bringing this thumb over and hold it. And before I continue winding, I'm going to secure this end. Now that's what I've got these zip ties for. I'm going to take a zip tie and I'm going to put it through. And you want to start the zip tie on the outside of this penetration point and bring it in on the inside of these wires so that it's going over that turn, and we'll cinch down and hold things in place. We'll pull that good and taut. There, okay. That's going to secure that end, right? Cut off the zip tie. Always point this away from yourself when you do this, because those things go flying. Or not. That time it didn't. All right, so we've got 1, 2 turns. Let's go on to the next one. And again, I'm going to feed this end through. And I'm going to push it through while I'm holding it here with my thumb. Make sure that it stays nice and tight against there, and I'm going to hold it. Excuse me. Hold it with this finger while I bring it around the outside. Again, just keeping them all together. Bring my thumb up and grab that side. And there's our next turn. 1, 2, 3. Put them all through again. And we just keep on going around. Always snug them down with your fingers solid to the core. Get them in there good and tight. See, and with the solid core wire, it'll stay. And you just go around and around. Ah. 9 turns. All right, now I'm going to secure this side with another zip tie. And there we go. The easy part's done now. It's all easy. There's our wound toroid. Now, the diagram, he's got these all color-coded, but my wires are all the same color, so how are we going to resolve that? Well, that's where our continuity tester comes in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my marker again, and I'm going to put on these wires one mark on one wire, 2 marks on the next wire, and 1, 2, 3 marks on the third wire. Then I'm going to go in here to the diagram, and I'm going to mark the yellow one 1, the red one, can't draw it upside down, 2, and the blue one 3, to correspond to my marks on those wires. Then I'll take my meter and I will measure continuity and find these wires over here and mark them accordingly. And that will be how we can keep them straight when we are doing the wiring. All right, number 1. There it is. All right, so this one is number 1. Where's my marker? There we go. Number 2. Is this one. Which of course means that this one's number 3, unless reality has shifted. Okay, now I've got my wires identified. We can start wiring things up. I will put a link to this diagram in the description. Okay. Number 1 on this side of the coil goes to ground on the SO239, along with, no, just this one. Number 2, this is going to go to the center on the SO239. And number 1 from the other side, as you can see, comes over and ties to that one. So let's see, here's number 1 here. So let me get the ground out of the way. This is going to have to tie to this. Now a nice way to do that, keep things clean, will be to bring this wire over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out how far over that'll bend on the toroid, stay on there, cut a little off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip this wire right here at the toroid a little bit. And then strip this and wrap it around it. And I'll solder it there. And that will be, you can see yellow tied to red, 1 tied back to 2. So we'll strip the wire on the end of this. And then, let's see, where is that going to reach? It's going to reach all the way over here. So we'll strip this wire a little bit right there. And I'll just bring this down here and we'll wrap that around there. Didn't bring my needle nose pliers upstairs. Okay, we'll go down to the bench in a while. We'll do the soldering, so that'll be that connection there. Okay, and then wire number 3 on our input point is connected directly to wire number 2 on the output. all right, which is this one. So I want to bring it over across the toroid, and then I want to bring this over across the toroid, and these two are going to be soldered together right here. So I'm going to cut and strip the ends of this one. And we'll just tie those two together. All right, I'll clean that up downstairs before I do the soldering. But that's basically going to be it. After we solder those, we'll position this in the box and make our connections. Well, we're down here at the bench getting ready to solder this 9-to-1 up. Got it in there and I routed the wires. I'll show you a close-up in a moment. But first, you notice something different? Yeah, I'm sure all of you spotted it right away. My poor man's solder station is gone. Right out of the blue, one day, a package appeared on my porch. And it seems that viewer Terry decided that I needed a new solder station and surprised me with one. I didn't ask for anything, it just, boom, it showed up. So shouts out to Terry, you know who you are. Thank you very much for the new Hacko solder station. So now I can do some better soldering. All right, let me get the camera looking down into this thing and we'll look at how the wires are routed and we'll get it soldered up. There. Yeah, now you can see it. Alrighty, so I have 4 things to solder. The ground comes over and it ties to a lug here and a lug here that's connected to the SO239, so that's our ground input. Here's our tap for the center, and the center that goes into the SO239. There's that cross connect between those two wires. We got to solder that. And finally, our output to the antenna. Got to solder this. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 things to solder. Let me grab my glasses and let's get these soldered. Oh, brand new soldering iron, fresh tip, plenty of heat. All right, I'm going to need my needle nose to do that center because I need to guide it into the SO239. There's solder already in that connector. Sorry, I got to tilt that because I need to hold this and that all at the same time. All right, we'll get this tap soldered. This join soldered. And the antenna output. Boy, this iron produces plenty of heat. Yep, there we go. All right. Done. There is our 9-to-1 all ready to get buttoned up and hooked up. So they're not really all that hard to put together. Of course, a little bit easier if you're not coughing a lung up. I am so sorry, guys, about the what is no doubt numerous edits on this to eliminate all the coughing fits. I wasn't coughing very much this morning, and I thought I was up to snuff for doing a video, and yeah. There we go again. Believe me, this is a lot better than it was earlier in the week. Hey, what do you know, that actually fits. So yeah, on the current ballon, the 1-to-1, my next 3D printer video is all about designing parts and the software advances in that arena over the past few years to make it so much easier for people. I'd have taken some cough syrup before I did this, but then I'd be so groggy that I'd have to call it the old drunk tech guy. Anyway, so that'll be the next video. We will talk all about design, how to design parts for the layman without having to learn CAD and go to college. And we will design a case for that 1-to-1 common mode choke and get it all assembled. So that'll be coming up soon. So there we are. Our completed 9-to-1, ready to hook up and feed the antenna. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Also, if you're not already a subscriber, click to subscribe. Join us on the Facebook channel for discussion about the videos. And if you'd like to help support this channel, please click to support me on my Patreon page.